The VA hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Captain Derek Mitchell sat in his dress blues, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights, filling out paperwork for his annual checkup. At 32, he was proud of his Marine Corps career, proud of his deployments, proud of the respect his rank commanded. He had that swagger that came with being a decorated officer, the kind of confidence that turned heads when he walked into a room. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching this from right now? Are you in the United States, United Kingdom, Philippines, Germany, Mexico, Brazil? It doesn't matter where you are. Drop your country in the comments below. These stories connect us all, no matter the distance. Now back to Derek. Across from him sat an elderly man who looked to be in his 80s, thin as a rail, wearing a faded bomber jacket covered in patches Derek couldn't quite make out from where he sat. The old man's hands shook slightly as he held a worn paperback, and his eyes seemed focused on something far beyond the pages. Derek had seen plenty of old veterans in places like this. He respected their service, sure, but there was always a part of him that wondered if their war stories had grown with time, if the legends they told in VFW halls were polished versions of much simpler truths. He had fought in Fallujah. He had earned his stripes in the sand and blood of real combat. That meant something. Trying to be friendly, Derek leaned forward with a grin. "Served?" he asked, nodding at the jacket. The old man looked up slowly, his pale blue eyes meeting Derek's. "Long time ago," he said quietly, his voice like gravel. "What branch?" Derek asked, his tone casual, almost condescending. "Air Force," the old man replied. Derek smiled wider. "Fly a desk or actually get up there?" The old man's expression didn't change. "Got up there. Nice, nice," Derek said, leaning back in his chair. He was enjoying this, the casual banter with an old-timer. "So what was your call sign? Bet it was something cool, right? All you flyboys had those Top Gun names." He chuckled at his own joke, expecting something ordinary, something forgettable. The old man was quiet for a long moment, his eyes drifting back to his book. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "Juicebox!" Derek burst out laughing, loud enough that several people in the waiting room turned to look. "Juicebox? Seriously? Man, that's rough. What did you do? Bring your lunchbox on missions?" He was grinning ear to ear, imagining this frail old man with some embarrassing nickname that had followed him through his career. The old man closed his book slowly and set it on the chair beside him. He looked at Derek with those pale eyes, and something in his gaze made Derek's laughter die in his throat. "I flew A-1 Sky Raiders in Vietnam," the old man said, his voice steady now. "Sandy missions. Search and rescue." Derek's smile faltered. He knew enough about military history to know what Sandy missions were. They were the most dangerous flights in the war, the propeller-driven planes that flew low and slow into enemy territory to protect down pilots until rescue choppers could arrive. If this story is hitting you in the chest right now, do me a favor, pause and hit that like button. It takes 1 second but helps more people hear stories like this. The old man continued, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of decades. June 1967, got a call that an F-4 Phantom had been shot down near Hanoi. Pilot and weapons officer ejected into heavy jungle. NVA everywhere. They sent me and my wingman in to cover them until the Jolly Greens could arrive. Derek sat frozen now, his paperwork forgotten in his lap. "We flew circles over those boys for 4 hours, the old man said. 4 hours of taking ground fire, marking enemy positions, dropping ordnance, danger, close to keep the NVA back. My wingman took a hit and had to pull out. I stayed. Ran out of ammunition, so I just kept making passes, drawing fire away from those pilots on the ground. Took 17 hits to my aircraft. 17 engines started smoking. Hydraulics failing. But I could still fly, so I stayed. The waiting room had gone completely silent. Even the nurses behind the desk had stopped typing. The Jolly Green finally came in, the old man continued. Got both pilots out alive. I limped back to base on one engine and fumes, landed with no brakes, no flaps. Crew chief said he counted 72 bullet holes in my bird when it was all over. He paused, his hands still now steady. The pilots I saved that day, they started calling me Juicebox. Said I gave them life, kept them going when they thought they were dead. Name stuck. Derek felt his face burning with shame. His throat was tight and he couldn't find words. The old man reached into his jacket and pulled out a faded photograph. He handed it to Derek without a word. It showed a young man, barely 25, standing beside a propeller plane that looked like it had been through hell. The side of the aircraft had a cartoon juice box painted on it, and beneath it the name Juicebox in bold letters. Behind the young pilot stood two other men, their arms around his shoulders, all of them grinning like they had just cheated death. "Those are the pilots," the old man said softly. "Lieutenant Commander James Porter and Lieutenant Rick Saunders. Porter made admiral. Saunders became a congressman. Both of them are gone now. But I got letters from their families every Christmas for 50 years, thanking me for bringing their fathers home." Derek looked down at his own chest full of ribbons and medals, and suddenly they felt heavy, almost fraudulent. He had done his duty, yes. He had served with honor. But this man, this frail old man he had been mocking moments ago, had redefined what courage meant. "Sir, Derek started, his voice cracking. "I apologize, I had no idea." "I was disrespectful." The old man waved a dismissive hand. "You're young, you'll learn. Heroism isn't about the noise you make or the chest you pound. It's about the moments when nobody's watching, when you have every reason to quit, and you stay anyway." He picked up his book again. "You've got time to figure that out, Captain." Derek stood up, and without thinking, he came to attention and rendered a sharp salute. The old man looked surprised, then slowly, with shaking hands, he stood and returned it. Around them, every veteran in that waiting room, young and old, stood and saluted. Even the nurses had tears in their eyes. That night, Derek couldn't sleep. He pulled out his laptop and started researching. He found the mission reports, declassified after 40 years. He found the medal citations. The old man, whose name was Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Hughes, had received the Air Force Cross, the second highest decoration for valor. He had flown 173 combat missions. He had saved 12 pilots during his tour, and he had never once spoken about it publicly. Derek thought about all the times he had told his own war stories, embellishing here and there, making sure people knew what he had done. And here was a man who had walked through the valley of death repeatedly, who had earned the right to boast, and he sat quietly in a VA waiting room reading a book, his heroism hidden under a faded jacket. This story should remind us all that the loudest voices in the room aren't always the bravest, that true heroes don't need to announce themselves. They carry their scars quietly, their memories privately, and their honor humbly. Lieutenant Colonel Raymond Hughes, call sign Juicebox, taught a young Marine captain a lesson he would never forget. Respect is earned not by the rank you wear, but by the character you show when no one is keeping score. If this story moved you, if it changed the way you see the quiet heroes around you, then please subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to remember that humility and courage go hand in hand, because these stories matter. They remind us who we should aspire to be. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.